Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give just a few more seconds here, make sure that everybody's logged on before we begin. All right, I think we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Sue Shalal, and I am the designated federal officer for the Science Advisory Board Hexavalent Chromium Review Panel. This panel has been assembled to review EPA's draft IRIS toxicological review of hexavalent chromium. Today's meeting is a continuation of the panel's meeting of July 19th, where they began to review their draft report. As always, all the materials pertaining to this review, including the documents to be reviewed, charge questions, agendas, public comments, any presentations, and any other documents that are developed, can be accessed on the SAB webpage associated with this SAB advisory activity. And just to let everyone know, who's listening in, the meeting is also being broadcast live via both audio and YouTube video connections, and you can find the call-in information as well as the link to the video webcast by going to the main SAB webpage at epa.gov/SAB and clicking on today's meeting date under the heading titled Meetings and Events. At this time, in my role as the DFO, I would like to formally open today's public meeting. And before I turn the agenda over to Dr. Morris, the chair of the panel, I'd like to make a few administrative remarks just to remind everyone from our previous meeting. The SAB is an independent expert federal advisory committee chartered under the authority of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA. And FACA and EPA policy require that SAB meetings be announced to the public in the Federal Register, and that substantive deliberations and interactions with EPA and the public be conducted in open session, where I, as DFO, am present to ensure the requirements of FACA are met. FACA also requires that during public meetings, we have opportunity for oral and written public comments. At the beginning of this meeting on July 19th, we did have 3 members of the public who had registered to present oral comments, and panel members are encouraged to consider these comments as they respond to the charge questions. Members of the public also have the opportunity to provide written comments throughout the advisory period, and written comments are distributed to the panel and posted on the SAB website. Minutes will be prepared to summarize the discussions and action items for all of the panel's meetings in accordance with the requirements of FACA, and will be posted on the SAB website. The SAB consists entirely of special government employees appointed to EPA to their positions. And as government employees, panel members are subject to all applicable ethics laws and implementing regulations. The SAB staff office has reviewed the confidential financial disclosure forms submitted by panel members, along with other information regarding their involvement in the development of materials related to the advisory activity under consideration. And EPA has determined that advisors participating in this meeting have no financial conflicts of interest or appearance of lack of impartiality under ethics regulations specified in 5 CFR 2635 relating to the topic of this meeting. So with that, I'd like to just go through the roster and to see how many of our members are online. I believe at least 1 or 2 folks will not be able to join us today. But please let me know if you are present. Dr. John Morris.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Barbara Beck. I believe Barbara may be joining us later. Dr. Mark Borsak.
I'm here.
Hi. Dr. Eamon Chen.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Dr. Max Costa.
I'm here.
Thank you. Dr. David Eastman.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph Haney.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Ben King.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Lawrence Lash.
I'm here.
Thank you. Dr. Gloria Post.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Yvonne Grusin.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Edwin Van Witgarden.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. John Weiss. I think Dr. Weiss is not able to join us today. Dr. Anatoly Zitkovich.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Morris. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salal. Welcome, everyone. Long time no talk. And I want to start off by thanking everyone for working on this panel, and especially under the short notice that we had over the last week for all the changes that we made. I think we'll follow the same approach that we did last week, that we'll just go through question by question and open it up for any comments and hopefully come to consensus on any changes we may want. And then we'll look at the cover letter, make sure we're all okay with that. And then I think we'll take a quick peek at the appendix or the appendices, because I think there's some questions about how we might best organize that. And then we'll have some closing remarks and talk about next steps. I don't know if the EPA has any comments. They're welcome to if they do. I see Dr. Thayer's on. I think
I am on, but I don't know if I have any comments. Just again, sort of thank you for your continued attention and dedication to this review.
Thanks. Okay, I think we're ready to roll. So let's just jump right into it. And we'll start with question 1, where they made some extensive revisions in response to our comments. So I'll just open it up. Does anyone have any comments or concerns on the revised draft?
If we could post the report, William, then we can go through all question by question.
So we're at question 1, which is page 10. Yeah. There we are. Any thoughts? We're all good with this? Dr. Rusin.
Yes, thank you. I think it's really important that we provide a listing of studies. It just was a little distracting, I think, for me to see this kind of very technical and editorial listing versus the actual tiered recommendations. So I wonder if Dr. Costa and others would mind maybe moving these into the editorial appendix for EPA to consider, because it just gives some sort of a undue weight, I think, to escalating these particular references over others. Just had a little bit of a heartburn about that.
Any thoughts? I'm okay with moving it to that Appendix C because they're all Tier 1 comments.
This is Dave Eastman. I had the same thought when I was reading through it. There was this very long block of references, and I thought this was unusual to have it in the text of the document rather than, say, in an appendix.
Is Appendix C supposed to be editorial? Maybe if we're I think there's some confusion among a bunch of people about Appendix A, B, and C and what the content is intended to be for each one, which might relate to a lot of the comments people are going to make.
Well, we'll get to that. If we get bogged down, we'll move it up and talk about it sooner.
I think someone
Um,
just said to put the references in Appendix C. That's the only reason I brought it up, and I wasn't sure what Appendix C was. That's why I brought it up now. Or maybe they said appendices, and I thought they said
Oh.
C.
No, it's Appendix C. I think the heading for Appendix C, I said primarily editorial in nature, right? But they're identified as Tier 1. So
Okay,
I think
as long as
we're all.
it's not just, or editor, maybe additional, including editorial and others or something like that, whatever.
I'm all right with saying something like that.
I thought it was just editorial. I forgot it said primarily, sorry.
Dr. Eastman,
No.
are you?
Yeah, if I can weigh in. Part of this, when I was drafting the response to charge question 6, I had pretty extensive comments. And so I put them in sort of different appendices and you moved them in. There was one group which were really suggestions to the EPA, which were background information. And I don't know where that ended up, whether it was in Appendix A, but they weren't really sort of minority reports. They were advice to the EPA based upon the expert knowledge. And I guess I could go try looking for it, but I'm not sure where it ended up. It doesn't seem to be, it's not a minority report type of comment as in Appendix A. And I don't think it really was a B. I didn't see it within Appendix B. And I don't think it was put in Appendix C. So I'm not sure where those ended up. But I'll look around and see if I can figure out where they're at.
Yeah, I don't think I moved them to Appendix C, but I might have if we had them flagged in our last phone call.
I don't think they were mentioned in our last phone call.
Okay.
They were kind of special. They were very detailed comments of someone with expertise giving advice to the EPA of things that they should include into the document. And they didn't appear to be, anyway, so it'd be okay if they're in Appendix A, I guess, but we would change it from sort of minority, but to minority of opinions plus other sorts of advice for the agency. I don't know.
Wait, was this about the ADAFs or something else?
It was about something else. These were
Okay.
comments largely related to genetic toxicology, which were fairly extensive
Okay,
on advising the EPA. These were in the initial comments. So I'll see if I can find them.
So I think maybe Dr. Post was on to something. Let's talk about the appendices to try to get that clear now, because we may be referring stuff to appendices as we move on. Go ahead.
So for this particular charge question, because these are, I agree, it could go into an appendix, and I think the way it's listed now is just a leftover from the original response to the charge question. So moving it over to appendix, I'd say appendix A, because these are references that individual members have suggested, but they're not necessarily, vetted or approved by the entire committee. So to charge question 1, the long list of references, I would suggest maybe moving it to A, because it's not a tier 1. All of these are tier 2. And these references are not endorsed by everyone on the committee. So it seems like appendix A would be more appropriate.
Okay. So do we want to label Appendix A as comments raised by individual members of the committee? And then just not make any comment whether they were a minority or not, just comments raised by individual members?
That's
the
what I would
main body
recommend
of
doing.
of our report clearly indicates what's consensus and what's not.
John,
Not
as I said,
hearing
that's
any-
probably what I would do because it can then collect a lot of information and not have it minority report per se, just individual words of advice for the agency.
So if we take that approach, then actually Appendix A and B would be combined and just labeled comments from individual members for consideration.
I think that makes sense, given the, I don't think we formally put together a minority report or something.
Dr. Post?
This is what I was confused about. Some of the comments in Appendix A, I think, are the opinions, a lot of it's about the mode of action or what maybe other things, mostly about the mode of action, that the majority of one or two panel members had that opinion and the other members did not agree. And then other ones, like the ones just my comments about the ADAF stuff, it was a lot more detail to show how it should be done, but nobody disagreed with it. So would it be presented I think it was instead one for the ADAF comments, one panel member said this, but everybody agreed with it. It was just too much for the report versus other things where there's actually only a couple people had that opinion and everyone else disagreed with it. Should that be distinguished? I think it should be.
Well, and I think that's open for discussion. It seems to me that if we're going to separate things into two appendices based on individual members versus consensus, then we're going to have to go through every single item and make a determination of the committee about whether this is a consensus view or not, which I'm happy to do. Any other thoughts?
Not that it's that important, but the ADAF stuff was just supporting information that showed how to apply what the commit. I'm just saying it's not that important in the scheme of things, but that was just supporting information copied from EPA stuff to show how to actually perform what was recommended in the report. So like nobody disagreed with it. It was just too long. So what, I mean, I don't see why there wouldn't. No, it's different than an opposite opinion, but it's not that important, but it's not really the same thing, even though it would be a lot of work maybe to go through everything, as you said.
Any other thoughts?
This is Dave Eastman again. I don't think at least certainly I'm not prepared to go through every item in those appendices to determine whether it's consensus point of view or not, or the majority reason. I think I would leave it as you indicated. These were kind of words of advice by individuals or smaller groups within the panel. Leave it that way.
I agree with this recommendation.
Okay, I think we're reaching a consensus. So what we shall do is combine Appendix A and B with a header that this is information from individual reviewers or groups of reviewers. I'll come up with some text for consideration by the EPA. I think that's certainly a practical way to go ahead with all of this. I mean, I'm sure the EPA will read everything that we send them, irrespective of where it is. So, any objections to that approach? Okay. Hearing none, that's what we shall do. I wrote myself a note. And now we're back into question 1. And without hearing objections, we shall move the recommended references on page 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 to this appendix AB. Any other comments on charge question 1? I thought it was very responsive to what we had talked about last week. So kudos to you guys that did that. Okay. We're done with charge question 1. We shall move on to charge question 2, which is page 18. Any thoughts on this?
I have a comment.
Yep. Oh, Dr. Post, go for it.
So at where it starts with A, and then in the paragraph under A, the response, it says listed below are several tier 1 recommendations, but I think they're all crossed out and there aren't any under A anymore.
Yeah, good catch. Good catch. That's page 20. So,
On line 14,
yeah,
or whatever, is that 100?
yeah. See, I got 2 versions in front of me here, so yeah. Yep, the listed below sentence we will take out. Because you're right, it's not listed below. Any other thoughts? Okay. Charge question 3. Which version? Yeah. Any thoughts on the overall comments? I don't think we made any changes there. Which gets us to gastrointestinal non-cancer, part A. I'm just flipping through. Page 24 is where we redline some stuff. Are people okay with those changes? Okay. This gets us page 25 to respiratory non-cancer outside the nasal cavity. And let's see. I don't think, just a couple typos. Any concerns on this? I think page 30, we redlined some stuff. Not hearing any. Gets us to C, respiratory, non-cancer, nasal cavity. See if I'm just flipping through this. Any thoughts? I think the only thing it did was we changed something to say apparent concentration response relationship. That's on page 34. Not hearing any concerns or comments. Gets us to hepatic, the bottom of page 34, where we made no changes till we get to page 36. We dropped one of the recommendations. Yeah.
Dr. Morris?
Yes.
On page 34, I think the
Yep.
first bullet of tier 2 is editorial and should be moved to the appendix. It's
Which
just a
one? The
legend.
EPA? should consider re-examining. Which one is it, Dr.
No, the
Rusin?
EPA should consider adding an appropriate legend to figure 3.21. Tier 2, first bullet on page 34.
Which page, are you on the final?
Oh,
version?
yeah, I'm on the clean version, sorry.
Okay. I got the clean version here, the first bullet. Oh, yep, that's gonna move. Yep. Thanks. Okay. So now we're to page 36. This is under hepatic. I guess that's the only other change. Any concerns, comments about hepatic? Okay. Now to developmental, which is page 37. On the track change, we made no changes there. Till we get to the bottom of page 39, where we dropped one of the comments. Any concerns, comments? Okay. Dr. Rusin, your hand's still up, but I'm ignoring you. Yeah, it's gone. This now gets us to the hematologic effects, where we made no changes. We're on page 42 now, which is immune, where we made no changes. And then we get to charge question 4, benchmark dosing. Okay. Where we, I guess, looks like we eliminated all the recommendations. Comments, concerns? We're all good with this? Okay. Hey, all right, we're moving here. Then we're at the bottom of this is an approach for converting dose to HED. And then there were some, I guess, the top of page 45. Where we just referred to individual comments to Appendix A.
Are we, I don't know that we were systematic in terms of calling out individual comments that went in the appendices.
Yeah.
Some of them are referred to in the main text. Some of them are just in the appendix themselves. I would suggest if they are minority opinions, or especially if they're subject to disagreement, they shouldn't even be brought up in the main text.
I'm good with that, right? Because you'd wonder why we mentioned some but not others.
Exactly.
So for consistency, I think we could just drop the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's Dr. Borsick. Are people okay with that?
Well, John, if I might mention, last time one of the EPA representatives said he thought it was useful to have reference within the main text to other opinions that were found in the appendix if they were unique. So I don't know how we want, there is some inconsistency, so I'm not sure how to deal with it.
The one thing I tried to do when I set up the appendix was in the appendix itself, separate them by exactly what section they refer
Exactly.
to in our main comments. So
Right.
that the
That does a
EPA,
good job of addressing that, so they can just go through and see, almost as a secondary report.
yeah, that was my thought. Rather than to litter the main document, they just have to print out the appendix and then go from there, because it cites exactly where the comment belongs. Thought that was the easiest way to do it.
I agree.
We're all okay with that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this comment about one panel member, it's on page 45, is going to be taken out. Need to find it. I'm making myself a note here. Okay,
Are we removing the entire paragraph from 1 to 6, lines 1 through 6?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay, we're both taking notes so we can cross-check each other. Okay. Any other thoughts on the comments to charge question 4? Hearing none, we're at charge question 5, the uncertainty factors. Any thoughts? That's page 47. Yep, you got it. We're okay with this revised text?
Yep.
Okay, hearing no concerns. This gets us to charge question 6, which is page 52. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Eastman, for going through all of this. So,
Dr. Post has her hand up.
oh, yes, Dr. Post.
So on page 53, this is just like a typo. On line 2, it says the word not's repeated.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
And well, it says, I just noticed the paragraph after that in the track changes, it talks about Appendix A, so I didn't know if that was going to be revised now.
Two good things. I think we decided to take out any reference to Appendix A.
Maybe you can search the whole document to make sure you didn't miss any later.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. All right. Next, Dr. Zikovich.
Yeah, I have a comment on 6B, so maybe I'm a little bit early with my hand.
Okay. Keep that in mind when we get there. We'll get to your comment.
On page 57, it mentions the appendix too.
All right, I'm gonna do a search
Okay,
for all the
Okay.
appendix. That way,
okay.
yeah, that'll just save everyone time. Dr. Eastman?
Well, this is coming up. I think it's probably similar to the comment by Dr. Zikovich. But on page 55, there was some new information added, which we hadn't seen before. And I'm not sure I agree with sort of the interpretation that was pushed for, was providing additional information, some valuable references, but some of the interpretation of it, I'm not sure I agree with. And I think it would be better to probably put it into the appendix, well, the appendix with the other sort of detailed information. So this is the
Okay.
information at the bottom of page 55 and the top of page 56 in the track changes portion of the report.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, we're in part B. I remember your hand still up, Dr. Zikovich, but let's do this first from Dr. Eastman. So what you're suggesting, Dr. Eastman, is that this whole paragraph starting on line 36,
Well,
page 55?
yeah, so
That's
the section pretty much gets moved to the appendix. This was not stuff we've discussed before. It didn't actually come through me. Apparently went directly to you.
I didn't get this.
Or maybe Sue did. It didn't come from
Maybe
me.
Sue did, yeah.
And
Yeah, it was information that was submitted by Dr. Ziskovich and added to after lines 34, just to expound upon that thought above.
So maybe before we decide in voting whether to move or not, discuss what it is. So I wrote this comment as a response to, in my opinion, unbalanced presentation of the question whether all data point to nonlinear extrapolation, nonlinear deposition of chromium at very low doses, because opposite interpretation, linear or even supralinear, we have evidence in literature. And I thought that it's important to present two sets of data. One, which is arguing that EPA should be considering nonlinear extrapolation. And there are evidence that support linear extrapolation with respect to chromium deposition. Because the three bullets above this red text, they didn't have originally any references, and nevertheless they were listed as supporting factor for nonlinear deposition of chromium. To me, that's very weak factors if they're not supported by references. And I actually disagree on that bullet one about diffusion, because there is no evidence that chromium-6 enters cells by diffusion. It's only organic chromium-3 complexes enter cell by diffusion. So that paper, which I referenced, and now this reference appeared in a bullet 3 above Alexander, they actually showed that in red blood cells, you can bring uptake of chromium-6 to 0 by blocking sulfate channels. So it means there is no passive diffusion. So I don't understand why, Summer document contained a statement about diffusion as a mechanism for entry of cells, and it's important for interpretation low doses, which if specific study says there is no diffusion, and I don't see references supporting, mechanism of entry through passive diffusion.
I would like to interject here for a moment, if I can, because I would like to second Dr. Eastman's recommendation to move it to the appendix. So, the new text just added argues against sublinearity and appears to be in opposition to the text above it and in opposition to the panel's, as I recall, 13 out of 14 recommendation itself to examine the implications of nonlinear toxicokinetics. By contrast, we did talk about some of this information that's above where the red text is, but a primary basis for the panel vote and recommendation for EPA considering nonlinear TK was presentation and considerable discussion of target tissue data analyses from my own published studies provided in the submitted pre and post meeting comments that relied on data from the same mouse species and NTP oral doses with some lower doses and demonstrated dose dependencies in target tissue concentrations, all of which is relegated to an appendix. The new text takes up a lot of real estate in the main body and starts out by saying some panel members supported the recommendation when it was 13 out of 14. And I also note that the cancer dose response data themselves showed a shape consistent with sublinearity at lower doses, which my pre and post meeting figures showed. So, I ask, are we going to present and highlight evidence opposing the recommendation here in the main body? Because if so, to be fair, we now need to bring all those tables and figures and texts from pre and post meeting submitted comments that are supportive of the recommendation up to the main text, because it just wasn't just the considerations that appear above where the red text is now. So that's my first comment on 6B.
So look, I voted for recommendation to EPA to further investigate dose dependence at low doses. Actually, after looking at your graph, but what I'm saying that we need to give balanced information. Saying there is information prompting us to recommend to look at low dose extrapolation, but it's not uniform. There is evidence also for linearity. So my point was only about balanced presentation. That's all.
I thought, let me just try to get some resolution on this. I thought we decided last week that you would write a dissenting opinion,
I did.
right, which would go in the appendix as a dissenting opinion.
If panel decides that that's the place to go, it's fine. I just wanted to explain, the reason why I presented this information. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to get it there because you came up with some very important references for the EPA to consider. I mean, one of the problems is, when you do the 1 in a million cancer risk, you've got the chromium concentrations at picomolar levels, and the sulfate concentrations are near millimolar. So that's only 9 orders of magnitude difference. So, the study about 50% inhibition with a 1200-fold excess of sulfate, right? When you put that together with 9 orders of magnitude, that highlights the factors that EPA should consider. So I think we really should put this somewhere, but I think it should go in the appendix.
Oh, so
if
just talk. No, hold on. So before I forget, that Km values were put in document incorrectly. It's micromolar, not millimolar.
Okay, then make sure that we get those corrected.
Yeah, that's fine. If majority of panel thinks it should be moved to appendix, I'm not going to be, fighting to death for that. But I'll go back to recommendation about diffusion. So how come we have a paragraph there which have no supporting references, and in fact the references I have in front of me says there is no passive diffusion?
Can I weigh in since I can put that
Sure.
It's not passive diffusion across the membrane. It's diffusion from the luminal contents through the mucus layer. And that's where you could have some,
That's not how it's written in a revised document. It says from extracellular to intracellular space.
Let's
if you
fix it.
saw it was the earlier thing was deleted. If you look at the screen, across the mucus layer was previously there. So maybe that should be reinstated.
Yeah, that's my mistake. Let's reinstate it. I misinterpreted what you were saying, Dr. Eastman.
Dr.
Yeah,
Morris, can I maybe weigh in on with a slightly different suggestion? Maybe
Yeah.
we can hear from everybody before we decide on what we're doing.
Okay.
So I think it's important that we make a tier 1 recommendation. So if there is people scroll down to page 57, it says that the majority of the panel recommended that EPA further consider using toxicokinetic factors in low dose extrapolation. We're not saying how EPA should do this. And obviously the panel has provided a lot of information, including the one that Dr. Zhitkovich added. So I think to not imbalance the main text and just to keep all of the individual members' considerations for EPA's review, I would like to suggest that we only keep the very first paragraph without 1, 2, 3, and all of the considerations, the new ones, and even the text below that kind of provides this back and forth. I really don't see any value in that being there. I would leave it up to the agency to consider all of this, and I would really hesitate to inadvertently propose some sort of weighing in as to how exactly EPA should consider the linearity or non-linearity. So I think that would allow us to reach consensus if we just keep the very first paragraph and the tier 1 recommendation that the agency looks into it and provide the rest of it in the appendix.
Okay, Dr. Eastman, your hand's still up?
Oh, well, I could take it down, but I mean, I don't see that as a problem. I mean, it's a pretty minor, as I see it, the introduction to those 3 points are something like, let's see what it says, several factors could potentially be involved. 1, 2, 3. That's a pretty minor comment.
But there are other factors, and I think Dr. Zhitkovich's point is that there are other factors as well. And so highlighting these 3 does give them, a weight that maybe we don't need to really do that. So, and we can just, keep that first paragraph and say, other factors could potentially be involved, see appendix so and so for further consideration. And I think I would be very much suggesting to everyone that the new text and even the text that remains there before recommendations, all of that be deleted, because again, I think we are not just saying that EPA should reconsider, but this can be misconstrued as to how exactly EPA should reconsider.
I agree with that recommendation.
I'm okay with that. Dr. Eastman, are you okay with that?
So I'm not sure exactly what we're deleting, but I mean, I'm okay to take out, the 3
If we
points are
delete it, we're
fine.
moving.
The 3 points, the deletion of the 3 points are okay for me.
And then the text
of the
on
new
pages
material is
56 and
fine.
57 before recommendations. I think that's really where we had a lot of discussion last week. This whole back and forth, I think, is useful, but it could be misinterpreted. And I would be very uncomfortable with leaving it there.
So, Dr. Rising, you're arguing to delete from lines after the first paragraph. So evaluation of these factors is warranted. And then, because they several factors could potentially be involved, deleting every from there below to what?
To the recommendations on page 57.
So
Oh, no, I don't.
I would say delete down through still additional discussion. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, but then we actually say that, that some members did this and others did that. And again, this is really, I think, we're not providing as much clarity as EPA asked us to do last week, when they asked us to really emphasize what is the majority opinion and keep that in the main body of the report. And then all of the useful considerations should be somewhere in the appendix. This narrative description of the discussion, 2 members said this, other members said that really is not a useful information, because it can be misconstrued.
I mean,
We're
essentially,
not
you're
deleting completely, we're moving to the appendix, right?
I mean, the appendix has individual folks' suggestions, and they're labeled as such.
Well, but this new red text, which came from me, was not in
Yeah,
my.
it should be in the appendix, correct. But the description of the discussion and back and forth, we don't really have that in many other parts of the report. And members of the public, the agency, and others have attended these. There is a record, but putting this into a narrative format, gives us potentially some additional weight, which I personally don't think it should be there. I mean, I wonder if others may weigh in, because again, this is very unusual compared to other parts of the report where we really go into the back and forth.
Let me, I think that's a very interesting idea. Let me see if we can parse it out a little bit. First off, are we all agreed that the text from, this is in the marked up version, the text from line 28 on page 55, several factors could potentially be involved, right? The listing of the 3 and Dr. Zikovich's additions, that we're going to move that to the appendix, right?
Yep.
Through page 56, line 19. We're all agreed we're going to move that to the appendix.
Yes.
Okay. And then the
okay
next,
with me.
and then the next question is, what do we do? Well, let me ask you one question about this. Should we separate this out? Should we put this in the appendix AB, or should we separate it out specifically as an appendix on toxicokinetic factors for consideration?
I would probably just put in appendix A.
Okay. Hearing No objections, that's what we shall do. So that'll all go to Appendix A. I'm just separating the issues here. Okay. Hearing no objections. Then we get to, we're on page 56, that's on the screen. And the rest of this, what should we do? Dr. Russin's suggesting that we move all of this discussion on page 56 to the top of 57. We move that to the appendix as well.
I'm not sure that the main body of the report should be silent on what caused the panel to vote how it did to take a look at nonlinear toxicokinetics. It seems like it would be important for everyone's understanding to hit on why the panel voted how it voted. And so anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
I think it's important to provide information that there was a vote, but I personally, my recollection is not that only the considerations that Mr. Heaney, you provided went into that, because as written, that presents itself this way, that I think there was a number of considerations from different points of view, from kinetics, from metabolism, from various dose response fits. Totality of the discussion, I think, has led us to have a vote. As written, it presents that one person's comments and one reference point actually provided that impetus, and that's not my recollection personally.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and so my inclination would be to make revisions to what's here and to reflect these other things that were discussed as well that led the panel to vote how it voted. So yeah.
So perhaps we can strike sentences 2 and 3, and then just can be found in Appendix A, and then a more detailed discussion of this point can be found in charge question 6B, and then the fact that the vote was taken. So if we can delete sentences 2 and 3, I think then that will provide a more holistic view on different considerations.
I mean, you're talking about sentences 2 of 3 of page 57?
Page 56, end of line 20 to middle of line 22.
End of line 20 to middle of
line 22.
Okay.
Ending with the reference.
So what you're saying, Dr. Russin, is it will read, additional discussion of these points can be found in Appendix A. And then the next thing is more detailed discussion can be found in Appendix A.
Well, I think it can be edited for clarity, but or we can just take the next sentence out as well and then just keep based on these considerations. The majority of the panel recommended that the EPA further consider. So I think those 3 sentences can actually go.
Yeah, so then it goes based on these considerations.
Well, that's going to give good introduction to recommendation. But second paragraph, I totally agree with Ivan. It's not really needed there. It talks about different chemicals, and it's really.
Excuse me, back to the paragraph before the second one. If it starts with based on these considerations, with the sentence on 26 that says what one panel member supported remain or not remain, if we're not talking about different people's opinions.
Well, we just decided last week to say that majority of the panel recommended that EPA, look at this again. And one panel member, me, said that as presented, these arguments are sufficient, right? So essentially the minority was to keep things as is.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sure we did discuss it last week, but it's for other cases where a minority disagreed, we're not including that, but because one person agreed we are leaving what one person said? Was that the thought process? If
In all other cases, minority recommended something is
Different.
done. In this particular case, my opinion was that nothing should be done.
okay,
So I can,
I just forgot if we'd agreed to that, sorry.
So pardon me for being a little slow here. So on page 56, line 26 and 27, that's going to remain. One panel member supported use of low dose extrapolation,
this
or we're
can
going
be
to take that
deleted.
out.
This can be
We're going to
deleted.
delete that.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, and
Yep. Okay.
I'm sorry, okay, good.
No, that's
As long as everyone agrees,
I think I'm not hearing objections. Let me read this paragraph as we have it. Additional discussion of these points can be found in Appendix A. Based on these considerations, the majority of the panel recommended EPA further consider using toxicokinetic factors, specifically dose dependency and chromium accumulation in low dose extrapolation for the oral route of exposure. That's right. That's how we'll leave this paragraph. We're all good with that?
A little bit, it's additional discussion of these points can be found in Appendix A, seems to imply that we're elaborating in Appendix A on the points that received consensus here. Might it be better to say something like alternative viewpoints can be found in Appendix A, or something along those lines? What is it that we?
Well, the points that both support and then things that have been brought up that don't support, would both be in an appendix somewhere. So we're not enumerating the specific considerations that led to this vote. You have to go find those for yourself in an appendix.
Right.
So,
Right.
one thing I might mention is the sentence that was being adapted. It tells specifically where in Appendix A to look for additional discussion. The discussion of 6A3, 6B1, and then follow up 6B2. So there, although we kind of gloss over it, there was a reason to specify those. It may not be necessary because the appendix is laid out by charge question and sub question. So they should be able to find it, but that was, the idea is that some of the responses, and this is question 6B, the response may be in 6A, charge question. Or the discussion may be there. I guess.
Yeah. I think my only thought is we're going to be moving more stuff to the appendix. And so 6A3 and 6B1 may not cover everything we're going to add. So it's best just not to specify it.
That's fine with me. Just pointed out that there was a reason they were specified.
Okay. Yeah, I get you.
So John, I suggested that of these points is taken out to prevent any confusion. Just additional discussion can be found in Appendix A, and then if there are specific references inserted, I think everybody would agree to that.
I agree.
You want me to include the reference to where in Appendix A?
Well, it's just say maybe on the charge question 6 or something like that, or if
Yep, I got you.
Dr. Borsuk and Dr. Eastman, can provide specific places to make it easier to find these things, I think that can be added. But rather than having of these points, just strike that and say additional information can be found in Appendix A, and then you or Dr. Shalal can add specific pointers to which section, because we're not in section 6.
Yeah. Understood. We'll do that. Dr. Shalal and I will do that. It may be generic, as you suggest. It may just say charge question 6 in Appendix A, but we'll add a cross-reference because this is fundamentally important to what we're recommending. Okay. So I'll add that. I wrote that down. I think we're in agreement on that paragraph. This is the the meat of the issue here, so we're doing this paragraph by paragraph. What about the next paragraph? It's been suggested that we move all of this to the appendix. If I heard Dr. Rusin correctly? Mr. Haney?
Yes, I'm fine with it, that being moved to the appendix. I did have one comment on it though. In that, for that paragraph, I think it's important to acknowledge that MOA is not the only determinant of linear, non-linear, which is the impression I got from reading the paragraph itself. EPA acknowledges that non-linearity in dose response can often result from toxicokinetics, which is on page 3-5 of the EPA guidance. So anyway, I just thought that was something that was sort of missing from this paragraph. Again, that EPA acknowledges that non-linearity in dose response can often result from toxicokinetics, which is page 3-5 of EPA 2005-A in my comment. So I just, again, I thought that was something that was missing from the discussion here. That's all.
And I guess I'm not following Mr. Haney because the next sentence says that, doesn't it? I guess I'm not following.
Which sentence?
Page, we're on 56, line 31 to 33. The panel also noted that due to toxicokinetic and other factors, EPA 205 cancer risk assessment guidelines allow deviations from the linear approach.
Okay. I guess it's covered there then.
Okay.
But I think this is still can be moved to the appendix because again, it's a discussion, and I think it clearly says that it's a something that was brought up but not agreed to uniformly.
Yeah. We agree, we'll move the appendix. No concerns? Hearing none.
The only thing I would see is if the EPA thought it was useful to have it there, they should know this. So it's fine to me to move it, the appendix. It's a little funny moving these things because essentially this is a distillation of what was already in the appendix. So then we're moving the kind of a summary back to the appendix. So anyway, good luck on
it. Yeah, I hear you. Especially when we get down to the ADAF business, it's all a summary of what's there in great detail in the appendix. Let's get to page 57 here. Are we going to move all of this to the appendix? Is that what we're thinking?
Yes. Well, on page 56, the stuff that we went through, the entire paragraph at the bottom of 56.
Yep, that's going to the appendix. And then page 57, lines 2 through 27 is going to go into the appendix as well. Is that what we're deciding? It's been recommended. I'm okay with it. Any concerns? Okay. We'll move all of that to the appendix. And Dr. Shalal and I will try to figure out how to make that appendix readable. Okay. Moving along, I think the next changes I see are on page 59, which is under the recommendations for the POD for the drinking water. Yeah.
Some of the, like the third bullet is truly editorial. So it's just to clarify what sex is used in the figure legends. So.
Okay. So.
The panel recommends that the information in the text about figure 327 be clarified, and the figure legends should state which sexes are shown.
Yep, that'll go to appendix on editorials.
Actually, I
Yeah.
believe last time we decided all three of those bullets would be moved to the editorial. If I'm not mistaken.
Oh, maybe I missed that. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of them are going to go.
I don't object to that. I think they are pretty minor.
Okay. So line 18 to 34, they're all going to the appendix. Okay.
It's line 21. Line 18 was struck.
Oh, that's already struck. Yep, I got
So
you.
21 through 30 would be moved to that editorial
Yep,
appendix.
yep. They will be moved. Okay.
The paragraph at the top, lines 2 to 12. That's going to the appendix as well.
Are we on page 59, Dr. Salah?
Yes, yeah.
Well, it's a minority opinion, so well, consensus minority opinions should be in the appendix.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
Oh, I think it's a good point. I think we should move that. Right. Oh, concerns about moving that?
My only issue is that, well, and it doesn't matter to me, but if I recall, one of the views expressed by one of the EPA representatives was it was helpful for them to know when there was sort of a minority opinion, even if it wasn't elaborated, but it was there so they could chase it down. So I'm hoping that somewhere the basis for the two minority opinion at least comes out is there was a minority opinion and you can find out more about it in the appendix. And I don't know
But
where.
we already kind of, tried to eliminate that and give it again any special weight from all of the other sections. So I think the appendix is still part of the document, and the agency, as they told us last week, is taking all of those comments carefully. But again, escalating a particular minority opinion, because this would be the only one left, again, maybe misconstrued.
When I put in together the appendix, I'll make sure it's clear that this is the minority opinion and that, I mean, it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, EPA is going to have to go through everything we write, including the appendices.
I mean, the only thing I think on this is that these were comments made by a lot of the stakeholders who made public comments, so that they recognize that their point of view was heard, at least by part of the committee. But if we can do that within the appendix, that's okay with me.
David, I think that all the presentations are part of the public record. And again, I don't think committee has formally endorsed any of the particular public presentations. So I think that, again, giving them extra mention, I'm not sure is consistent with how all the public information or minority opinions are being treated.
Okay.
Okay. I guess we've agreed that that'll go to the appendix for the reasons that we stated. This gets us to the end, page 61. We're just confirming, right? The thing that's redlined is because it was only a single person that said it, and we're not cross-referencing these individual comments. So that's consistent with everything else we've done. Okay. I think unless I'm hearing any other burning issues, we are set with the document.
Sorry,
Yeah, Dr. Busick?
yeah, so I had something in the comments because I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but I also didn't want to
Oh,
forget.
okay.
So what I wrote in the chat was just that I'd like to suggest that all this talk of the appendices, this current Appendix C, I suggest should be maintained as editorial comments, but promoted to the main report rather than included as an appendix, since it represents the consensus of the committee. To me, it feels a little confusing for it to come at the very end after the minority views. At the least, I feel like it should be the first appendix, because it really is, yeah, it's part of the main report. It just happens to be editorial comments.
So just
Okay.
renumbering, meaning the editorial comments that are tier 1 should be Appendix A. Is that correct, Dr. Borsak?
Yeah, that's right. Either Appendix A, or I might prefer that they be a closing section to the main report, but either one of those is fine with me.
I think I support Appendix A.
I'm happy making an Appendix A.
Thanks.
And we'll you're right, because we all tended to agree with these as consensus. So we'll keep it further separated from the others.
Yeah. Mhm.
So Appendix A will be the editorials. Okay, good point. Mr. Haney?
Yeah, I'd like to mention something. Last week, I saw a screenshot where there were some highlighted references, and those were being requested, and I sent those on actually during our meeting last week. But then looking through this report, I think I may have misunderstood that the desired references were limited to just those 4 highlighted, because going through the report, I'm seeing various highlighted references that I had put in my comments. So I just like to say, if there's a need for those highlighted references appearing throughout the report, I could send them on again, but they're all included in the references to my pre-meeting and post-meeting comments. That's where they're located. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, Mr. Haney, I will reach out to you if I still am unable to locate some of those references. But thank you for sending along the 4 that I had asked for earlier.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Don't hesitate at all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay. That gets us to the cover letter.
Wait, excuse me,
Oh.
I had something on something in one of the appendices. It's on.
I was gonna do, yeah, we'll do
We're
that
gonna do
now.
that later.
No, we'll do it now. Go for it, Dr. Post.
Okay. 135, page 135 of the track changes version.
Is it,
135.
okay,
Wait. So the first, I think we're gonna combine, it just says with one exception, that's,
right, that's
that's a typo, but it's all gonna be changed because
it's
there's,
gonna be changed.
so this
Yep.
whole part is my comments on the ADAF's but the way it's written, like the text in the, like on line 19, it was just copied verbatim. Wait, where is it? It says I reviewed on line 19. I think it should say, it shouldn't, I don't think it should say it that way. I think it should say to evaluate whether the application, the MOA information was reviewed for the 20 other carcinogens. Instead of I reviewed the MOA information, it should say the MOA information was reviewed.
Okay. If,
Just
I-
Realistically, it was reviewed by one panel member.
Well,
Yeah.
it says above one panel member. Or you can say was reviewed by one, it already says that at the top, but if you want to say that, fine, but it shouldn't say it's, it wasn't intended to be just copied with the word I into a report. however you want to do it.
So what line number are you on?
Line 19,
Line 19, I reviewed.
it should say the MOA information was reviewed by the panel member, because above it, at the top, it says one panel member or something, whatever.
Okay,
And then,
that's, yeah, line 19. Yeah,
wait,
we'll fix the I. All right,
which is, I had another comment, one last comment, I don't know what so appendix A and B are all gonna be combined now, so it doesn't matter, right? Because I'm on page 139. Maybe this comment doesn't apply anymore the way it's gonna be changed. Can we just look on page 139? It probably doesn't apply anymore. Additional suggests on line 8, it says from 3 reviewers, and my comment was, if it was from 3 reviewers, should it be in appendix A? But I guess it's all going to be combined, so it doesn't matter anymore.
right.
Okay,
Right.
that's it. Thank you.
Might mention, I had brought up earlier that there were recommendations by some of the reviewers using their expertise that were advice they were giving the EPA. This is where that stuff ended up. So it's
Okay,
all that is, and that could go into however we're constructing the appendix. It's there, but it wasn't so much, these were individual reviewers had specific recommendations on changing very detailed items. And so that's what's showing here from, I guess, starting here on this page 139 of the PDF and going on for a few more pages at least.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know when I went through this, I was sort of struggling about whether this ought to become editorial or not. I sort of went through each one, but let me see we'll put a little header on it somehow.
I feel for you because I had to do this before you did.
Yeah,
So it's kind of ambiguous. I pulled it out because I thought this is valuable information, but it's not. I didn't know where to put it.
you're right. I think that's generically true for this entire appendix. We think that EPA ought to be aware of it. But it doesn't belong in the main body.
Agreed.
Mm. Okay. Are we to the cover letter? I've got some suggested changes in the cover letter just to make life complex for everybody. That's page 2 at the top. It's with respect to the toxicokinetic things. So let's see, I've got it on the essay. This is line 23. Okay. It's been suggested by Dr. Zikovich, which seems fine with me, that it starts off, it's been noted that cellular absorption of chromium-6 is complex. Boom, 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 boom. It's suggested that we actually delete that whole part, cellular absorption is complex, all the way through to the next sentence. So the way it would read is the EPA, SAB noted that absorption efficiency may be nonlinear relative to luminal chromium-6 concentrations. You follow what I'm saying? We're just making this a very general comment. And EPA can go into the text and the appendix for details. Are we okay with that? Just makes this more general, doesn't open us up for disagreements. I'm hearing no no problems with that. The other change, just in terms of being very accurate with our words, is, let's see, the reduced absorption. I've got two different versions in front of me. Let's see.
On line 39, I made a suggestion to potentially reduced.
You
absorption.
found it. Thank you, Dr. Zikovich. Yeah, we want to just insert the word potentially. Okay. So it would read, the irrespective of low dose extrapolation approach, as noted above, the potentially reduced absorption efficiencies with low doses as compared to high. Again, just being scientifically accurate.
Fine with me.
Okay. All right. Hearing no objection, we'll make those changes. I think the main task, which will fall to me and Dr. Shalal, at least for the first cut, is to go through the appendixes, put A and B together and try to make it seem somewhat coherent. Are there any other thoughts? Remarks for the good of the fraternity? I think
I would just
we're
like to
gonna-
thank you for taking the lead on putting all this together because it's pretty complicated. So thanks to both you and Sue for tackling this.
Thank you. That may
Yes,
be
thank y'all so much.
premature. Wait till we see what we come up with. I'll give it a shot. Once I get into it, may not be quite so bad. So I think we're done. We need to go through, just let everyone know the next steps, which I'll defer to Dr. Shalal because she knows that better than me. I would again like to thank everyone for working on this panel and their patience in going through this, parts of it line by line. And we all remained civil during all of our disagreements, which was just wonderful. So again, thank you. It's been a pleasure so far. And I will turn it over to Dr. Shalal, who'll go through our next steps or final steps.
Yeah, I want to second that. Thank you very much to everyone that participated in this panel. You've done an exceptional job in putting all this very diverse information together. So the next step is, I guess, for me and Dr. Morris to go through the report and make the changes that were agreed upon today. I will then share the revised report with all of you panel members, and just to have you take a final look. And then I will ask for concurrence that we approve the draft report once it's been revised. And then after that, it will go to the chartered SAB. They will, I think, have a meeting sometime in the fall, in a couple of months, I think maybe September timeframe. To review this report, and then once we get concurrence from all of you on this report, essentially your task will be complete. Should the review of the SAB, the chartered SAB, request that we go back to our panel members to get some further clarification or some redo of a question or additional information from you, then we will be coming back to you for that information. But most of the time, when our chartered body does their review, and it is not a re-review of the document, they are there to look at the readability of the report, whether the charge questions were sufficiently responded to, whether there is supporting information for the recommendations that were put forth and things like that. So once that review is complete, then it will be transmitted to the EPA administrator. So at this stage, it's going to fall on me and Dr. Morris to do the changes, the revisions that we agreed on today, and then I'll be sending out the report to you for concurrence. And that should happen, I think, probably within 2 weeks from today. You should be receiving the revised report for your final concurrence at the latest. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Morris, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, you've given me my charge.
Okay.
Yep, that I should be able to do that without a problem.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all. I don't see any hands up and I don't see anybody asking questions. So if that is correct, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
And
everyone. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank y'all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.